Welcome to Keep It, Cricket Media's show about pop culture and politics and what happens when they smack into each other at an alarming speed. I'm your host, Ira Madison III, a television writer and Fall Out Boy fan.
I'm Louis Virtel. I'm a TV writer and Jane Fonda historian.
And I'm Aida Osman. I'm a TV writer and alleged comedian.
Let's get into it.
As we've discussed on the show before, rapper, legend, Megan Thee Stallion was shot in July. She was shot in the foot by an unknown assailant. We all suspected it was rapper Tory Lanez, but on Instagram Live recently, she finally came out and said that he was the person who shot her, and the reason why she did not announce it at the time was that, you know, the police were coming and she was worried about Tory Lanez, a black man, being killed by the police when they came to deal with the situation. And, you know, that is something that just sort of had my heart breaking for her all week. The fact that she had to think about this man's safety over her own in that situation. She shouldn't have to be Queen and Slim.
No, not both at the same time. She went on Instagram Live, like you're talking about, Ira, to talk about everything that happened and to finally, you know, give her own public testimony to the way that she could. And yeah, it let out to us that she disclosed a lot of information out of fear, out of wanting to protect Tory Lanez, out of wanting to, and also to remember that it happened July 12th when we were still are in the middle of dealing with militant cops and trying to deal with our own fear as far as, you know, being a black person and having to encounter police. So yeah, I'm just devastated right now trying to figure out why this nigga did this to Meg Thee Stallion. Like, I just don't understand. There's no justification. There's no real information about what happened other than black women are just not safe. Black women are entirely not safe around angry black men.
Also, I mean, like, I know on Twitter I guess a lot of people discuss this, but it just feels like this story hasn't gotten enough attention. It feels weird to me. You know, like, this is something that is hitting on a bunch of things that we're all talking about all the time right now. And yet she's an extremely popular entertainer peaking right now.
Yeah.
And yet it's sort of like the fifth thing we know about her at the moment. I don't know. I just think it's strangely sitting in pop culture right now. It's not rising to where it should in the conversation.
And then when people do speak, you have someone like T.I. who was quick to run to the defense of Meg Thee Stallion, but said about Tory Lanez, how could you shoot someone in a bikini? So which is to say that the reason that black women are valuable in any way and that we shouldn't inflict pain and trauma on them is because they're these shiny, beautiful, delicate objects of affection for black men. Or you get other men in Hollywood who refuse to speak out about it until they say something like, I'm going to wait until we have the full story. Like, what other information do you need to speak out against Tory Lanez because of this? He shot her. That is a fact. She told us that's what happened. What else could have happened? Meg could have had a gun and I still wouldn't have cared. Meg didn't shoot this man. Meg didn't do anything to inflict pain or trauma toward the direction of that man. It's all just such a frustrating situation.
It's especially a frustrating situation because you have, like you said, people on one side who are just sort of stripping away her humanity, because there's this idea that because she is a black woman, she is quote unquote resilient, you know, and sort of this idea that this happened, and then you have the WAP video and like this like empowering moment. So it's like, oh, of course that didn't faze her, you know. It reminds me so much of like when I read Claudia Rankine's essay about Serena Williams, you know, the idea of like how when they talk about her in tennis, you know, they talk about her muscles and her body, you know, like, and her as sort of like this black woman who maybe exudes what other people would say as more masculine features because they're in contrast to, you know, petite white features, you know, that sort of strips away their humanity and caring about them in a way. And I know that we would be talking about this differently if Megan were white, or even, you know, like the Rihanna situation, you know, because Rihanna, you know, was not a dark-skinned black woman. I don't know, you know, it just seems unfortunate to have to deal with this discourse online and seeing less people talking about it than I feel that they should. I mean, like, I only recently found out that Tory Lanez is Canadian.
I know, girl. We need to get him deported. Just out
Deport
of here.
his ass,
Deport.
Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau.
And this is like, maybe a little bit insider knowledge in sometimes the Black community, but my biggest fear about all of this, I mean, other than beyond he was trying to hurt her, was that he was shooting at her feet as some type of antagonization method and hit her. Like, either way, it's fucked up. And on the other side of it is that there's a lot of unraveling that Black women just have to do right now, a lot of unlearning. And the onus does not fall on us to protect Black men just because we know that our Black men have to deal with the white institution and racism and patriarchy in ways that we can't rectify. So it's difficult. There's no easy answer to this. There's really no easy answer to this, but it's the same reason that women, like when we were talking about Drew Dixon and how she had remained quiet for a long time about Russell Simmons, and how someone like Meg Thee Stallion refused to tell the police or anyone at the hospital that Tory Lanez shot her. We are only hurting ourselves when we don't speak out immediately about pain inflicted on us.
Also, you brought up the Rihanna situation from a decade ago, Ira, and I mean, a major difference there was that was one of the most gruesomely distributed images ever. Mm-hmm. And it's like, is that what it requires so that the conversation goes where we needs to go? Because that is another version of dehumanizing that, I don't think tabloid culture is capable of handling,
Well, that also brings to mind what also happened this week on Sunday evening when Kenosha police, my home state of Wisconsin at it again, shot a man, Jacob Blake, close range in the back 7 times. He was breaking up a fight between 2 women, and then police were called to the scene, and of course he was tasered and then shot, and this brought up conversations online about distributing gruesome images, right? The video was being shared, and it reminded me of the George Floyd video, and this idea that do we only care about trauma inflicted on Black people when we see the photographic evidence, And I don't know, that just hurts, It's like maybe if we saw something of Meg, people would feel more anger, maybe because they hear like shot in the foot, it just sounds like funny to them, ha ha, as opposed to seeing that image of Rihanna with those bruises, and this image of Jacob Blake. And there were a lot of conversations about whether or not we should even be sharing these images, right? And weirdly, I didn't see the video once in my timeline at all. I only saw my timeline with people talking about don't share the video, which is at least is a plus. But, I feel like that also has the Streisand effect, right? You say don't show it, and then all of a sudden it appears.
I mean, I think, Ira, you're right. And I do fear, though, that like there's something very human about needing to see the pain and the trauma before you start to care. And I think about Black Lives Matter and the killing of George Floyd and how ubiquitous the imagery of the knee on his body was, and how we even saw DaBaby repeat it in a music video at an award ceremony. So I wonder if although this isn't like the best way, and doesn't make me feel the best about being a human being, that, like you're saying, Lewis, it would have maybe been more beneficial if we saw bullets coming out of Megan's foot. If the video of the helicopter footage of her bleeding out was more widespread, maybe this would have been a bigger conversation too.
Well, also, I mean, like, let's say there wasn't a video of this and there was just a description. I feel like we're in this space now where people call, like, literally just a journalistic description of what happened biased in some way. Like, you're not getting the picture. You're not understanding what really happened because it's conjecture hearing about it written down as opposed to having to fucking see it. And that's not true. If you just, like, the events as just told journalistically are straight up fucking horrifying. It is not anybody adding their own perspective to it. It is, to quote Michelle Obama, it is what it is. And I'm sympathetic to what you just said, Aida, about something about seeing this stuff triggers us in a specific way that maybe galvanizes, but it's just awful that it has to be that way or is that way.
I definitely agree with people that it's horrifying for Black people to have to constantly regurgitate these images, you know, especially, you know, like the conversation around Black people who are creatives now, or like even just trying to do their fucking job, like how you're able to go into work or record a podcast, you know, like when you're thinking about these images and it just is weighing you down. But there's also this idea that we're in a fucking world where everyone loves a conspiracy theory now. And even online, especially now when we're all locked down, like it just feels like everyone is susceptible to some sort of like fake YouTube video or someone just tweeting something like pretending like it's fact, and then all of a sudden it's decided that it's fact, or you do some fucking QAnon shit, you know? And I feel like images and photos and videos like combat that, you know? So on one hand, I think it's gross that Black people have to see these horrifying images regurgitated, but on the other hand, like, I don't know, how else do you convince people that things are real? Because if we're talking about convincing white people that trauma happens to Black people in the Jacob Blake incident, that's one thing. But then you have Black people on one hand who won't even believe something that's happening to Meg. So where do we draw that difference?
The closest I will ever come to understanding QAnon, though, is following Madonna on Instagram, and I'm not getting any closer. So.
You know, I do just hope that people do get Tori up out of here, you know? Like, we've had long conversations about Chris Brown and other people, and it would just be a shame to see him, like, the moment that he jumps on, like, someone else's song, you know, like, as a feature or, you know, is on the radio again, you know, it's just going to be like, no one cares.
Yeah, Tory Lanez, you are a whole piece of shit. And, like, I do want to thank people like Chance the Rapper who went out of their way to speak out against Tory Lanez, and also, of course, a woman we love, JoJo, who removed Tory Lanez, who was originally featured on a project that's coming out. So that makes me happy to hear. We're getting closer. And of course, a lot of that is going to come from Black people and women before it comes from white men, but we are still getting closer.
Yeah. And in the instance of Jacob Blake, who I brought up as well, if you can, please donate to the Milwaukee Freedom Fund, which is assisting protesters in Kenosha. And the GoFundMe for Jacob Blake and his family is gofundme.com/justice for Jacob Blake.